Okay, welcome to this tutorial that is about the basics of 3D modeling in Blender. We're going to cover a couple of fundamental concepts. First of all, we're gonna talk and show a little bit about the 3D space in general, how it functions and how you should be thinking about it. We will also go on to talk about objects and meshes. Then we're going to talk about 3D manipulation, mesh editing, and then finally modifiers and modularity. And in the end, I'm hoping you will be creating this house alongside with me, which I'm hoping to be covering a lot of these aspects. Before we start actually modeling, let's understand how 3D space works. Everything in Blender exists within a coordinate system. To understand this, let's look how a coordinate system for 2D works. Here you have a x-axis and a y-axis. In any point in this space, you can put a coordinate. Coordinate just tells us where something exists along this axis. If we place one point, it's just a location in space. In 3D modeling, we call this a vertex. If we play two vertices, we can connect them. The line between them is called an edge. Then if we create a third vertex, we can connect all three, and this creates something that is called a face. This is the simplest possible surface. It's a triangle. Every 3D model, no matter how complex, is ultimately built from many small surfaces just like these. So then eventually, if we introduce a third axis, then we can point between these three, and then we can finally get a face that exists within this 3D space. Let's go through the basic navigation of Blender in object mode. This is going to be translation, scale, and rotation. The way that you access these are, well, you can always access them, but if you're using the default Blender setup, you won't have this little gizmo here. I will usually recommend, recommend this is what I use. I use this object gizmo, and then I do move, rotate, and scale. So I have these accessible to me. You can drag along these arrows, color arrows, and it's going to do it just along those lines or that axis. You can also press G. That means that you're gonna be able to move your object in any location. Again, you can do G and press a key that adheres to the axis that you want to move it along with. For example, you can do G and Z. And now I'm just moving it along this axis. Now, the second one that we talked about is rotation. Rotation is accessed by clicking on any of these lines or these circle lines here, and then I'm just moving it alongside whatever it is. You can also just click in the middle of it and you can rotate it as you please. Again, you can also access this through the keyboard. You can press R and you can do, for example, Y here, and you can also hold in Control, and then it's going to be snapping to whatever your snap value is. You can see here what it's snapping for every 5 degrees. One thing you can also kind of do just for all of these is that you can let go like this, and every time you do an action in Blender, you can expand this little thing at the bottom, and then you can write in whatever value you want. You can also directly just write in, for example, RY45, and then it's automatically going to do that for you. Then lastly, we have scale. Scale is accessed through the little cubes here instead. You can scale it in these like this. One thing that's kind of handy is to know that you can hold shift to scale in every direction except this one. So for example, if I do this one, it normally scales like this. However, if I hold down shift, it's going to scale everything but that axis. And that's pretty much all I'm going to cover for the general navigation. Now, second part, we're going to talk a little bit about the, let's say, more surgical version of mesh editing. So the way that you do this is that you switch from object mode to edit mode. You can also do this by tab. It's pretty handy to learn that that's going to be your go-to. Now you have three different ways of manipulating this object or accessing this information. As we talked about before, we talked about vertex, we talked about edge, and we talked face. And all of these are accessible through 1, 2, and 3. Or you can simply click here on one of these. So, for example, if you click a vertex, you can, just like we did the translation before, you can move this around like so. You can do G and Z to lock it here, or you can use this gizmo to move it around. You can do press 2 to access edge, and then you can select an edge like this, and then you have the same kind of manipulation. You can, in this case, also like scale up and down. Obviously not like this, because it's just a flat edge like this. If you would do it like this, however, then you can. Let's see. And then finally we have the face, which is 3 on the keyboard. Here you can do the same thing. Translation, you can do rotation, and as well you can do scale, like so. And that's it. Okay, so now we're going to move on to creating this house. So one of the key aspects of 3D modeling is that, unlike when you're drawing in 2D and when you just draw the same window over and over again, in 3D you generally want to adhere to something that's called modularity. That kind of means that you create this one object one time and then you populate it throughout the scene whenever you need it. So for example, for our house, we would maybe make the base, and then we would make one of the house pillars, but then we would maybe mirror this house pillar and duplicate it. And the same thing with the floor, is that maybe we would just make one part of one window, create several versions of this to create one wall, and then eventually we would circle this around the house, and then we would create the floors by duplicating them as well. So the goal of this tutorial will be that we're going to build this house here. It is quite a simple house, but I think it kind of goes through the basics of Blender. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do, I'm actually going to keep the default cube for once. I'm going to start by making these pillars here. And in order to do that, I want to start making you think, not making everything individually, meaning that we're just going to make one pillar and we're going to use that as an instance to make all of our house pillars. So, first of all, I usually like seeing my gizmo, and this is something that you can enable by going in here. Sorry, not here. Go in here and enable move, rotate, scale. Something that I like to do is that I like to have the pivot at the bottom of this mesh. Because if you can see here, if I rotate and stuff like that, it's going to rotate based on the middle of this cube, which is not really what I want. So I usually just I go into edit mode, I select the bottom face, I hold control. This makes me snap to the grid in this case. And then I'm gonna thin this cube out a bit. And I do that by holding shift and I select this blue box. This blue box is normally for scale, but I want to scale everything but the z-axis. By pressing shift and then this little cube, then I'm telling Blender I want to scale everything that is not the z-axis. So if I do this, I'm getting a thinner cube. Please note, if you get this, if you look at the transformation values to your right, you're going to see it's going to minus. You want to try avoiding going minus in general. So try keeping it in plus scale here. After that, I'm just going to position this out. I'm going to hold control again because I like snapping, but you really don't have to be snapping things that much. I'm going to put it over here. Now, I want to say that I want to mirror this here, here, and here. So easy enough. I'm just going to add in a mirror. Oh, nothing is happening. Did the mirror not work? No, the mirror actually is working. The mirror is working perfectly. You currently have two objects that are mirroring based on the pivot here. So you have two objects that are inside of each other. But the thing is, like, I want to mirror from this position in the middle. The way I do that is that I need to tell Blender somehow that this is from the position I want to mirror from. I usually do this by adding so do Shift A, adding an empty. The empty will not really do much in general, except it's it is kind of like helping you to tell Blender in general what you want to do. So in this example, I want to tell Blender, I want you to use this as the mirror. So I use the picker here, select the empty, or you can also just go in the list here, select empty. I'm just actually gonna name this. As well as this one, house pillars. In general, I know naming things is really boring, especially for beginners. The thing is, like, I don't think anything I will tell you will make you start naming things. I think you just have to go through the painful realization that you need to name things eventually. Then I will click the Y because, as you can see now, I am correctly mirroring the x-axis, but I also wanted to mirror this one, which is the y-axis. So I will click here and I will successfully have the pillars here. I usually maybe like having some kind of bevel to it. The way I could bevel is doing this, selecting all the edges in the edge mode, and simply do Control V. And this will bevel all of these at the same time. However, just like I said, I feel like in general in Blender, you want to keep all this that's called destructive workflow to the very end. Meaning that if it is possible for me to not do this bevel manually at this point, I'm going to do it. So I'm just going to select all the edges here. I'm going to right click and I'm going to do edge bevel weight. I'm going to pull this. I'm just using the mouse here to pull it. And usually expand this one just to make sure. If it's not saying 1, you can just go in and type 1 here. Now I can do bevel here. Now you're going to see it's applying bevel to the entire object. This is also the second thing that's kind of good to know. You can see the bevel is applied a bit differently here. That's because we've been scaling this object. In general, you usually want to make sure that your object is not does not have like different rotation scale values here. So I'm going to do Control A, and I'm going to do apply rotation and scale. Now you're going to see the bevel is even, but I have bevel here on top, which I don't want at this point. And I'm going to do in bevel settings here on the modifiers. I'm going to do weight, and this is the weight that we set for this model. Okay, so next thing that we're going to do, if we go back to our house model, yeah, okay, we're going to do this little house facade thing. In that example I used the mirror, but I think we're going to do the array here just to show you the array as well. I'm going to do mesh plane, and I'll do rotate, and I think it's going to be, I press R to rotate, X to say which angle I want to rotate in. Actually I want Y. So Y, and then I just type 90, and it's going to rotate perfectly for me. Then I'm going to push this one out. No, sorry. New array does not actually do that. So what I'm going to do is just push this up so I can have the pivot here. And then I'm going to do the array. For array, I'm going to change it to be, is it curve circle? I think it's, oh no, okay. Let's see. It's a bit new to me, unfortunately, so I'm going to be testing this a bit. No. Is that not it? Could it be I need to rotate you? All right. Does this mean if I do 4, it's going to do, okay. Yeah, okay. So I needed to do circle, and I'm counting 4 walls, and then the radius, because if you go here in edit mode, you're going to see the object is still here in the middle, right? So I just increase the count to 4, and I'm saying it to push out 1 meter. And then we're going to have our first house walls here. Let's make some colors, I think. Just, it's going to make it a bit easier to see what we're doing. So I'm just going to, in this case, I'm just going to name them based on colors. Not something I really recommend doing in general, but we're going to do it for now. Oh, sorry. So the way you do it, this is by going in Material tab, and I'm going to show you on the next one actually. Like this, you do new, and then you can just do name it whatever you want, and simply select color in base color. All right. We're gonna make a door. You have a couple of different ways of doing this. Let's see the way that I want to do it now. Yeah, let's do it like this. Shift A. I'm gonna do the cylinder. Let's do 16. Hold on. Cylinder 16, and I want the capsule to be triangle fan. That's what I kind of want. I'm just gonna select these ones by going into edit mode, selecting these ones here. I'm gonna do, actually, we go in Z here. I'm gonna press Z. I'm doing wireframe. I'm selecting everything here on the bottom, doing X to delete. And now I'm gonna have something. I'm going back in Z, doing solid, holding control to snap rotate, like so. I'm going to scale this down, holding S to scale this down again, like so. And then I'm doing going edit mode, edge mode by pressing 2. And if I do Alt, it's going to select the edge ring that is available to me. I'm holding E to extrude. So extrude just takes whatever you have selected. I'm going to make a continuation mesh of it. And I'm going to, well, I wanted to snap to the grid, but it's not. So there was a small white light in the beginning where I said that I was snapping to grid. I was not snapping to grid. I was actually snapping to increments. But you can actually go in here and say what you want to snap to. And in this case, I want to snap to grid. So I'm going to select here, grid. And now the control will be snapping to the grid. And now we have a door. I'm going to go into material and I'm going to assign this pink door here. I want it to be slightly smaller, but if you see here, if I do scale, it's going to scale like this, which is kind of annoying. I mean, you can do this and just push it down like that. I don't like doing that. So I'm going to select this one vertex that we selected here. I'm going to do Shift S and take cursors to select it. So this is the second thing that is about Blender. You have this thing that's called a 3D cursor, and this 3D cursor, I mean, it used to be how you used to do a lot of things in Blender. This new Gizmo thing, I think, was added. I mean, now it's been probably 10 years, but in the beginning, you did everything with this 3D cursor. But anyway, so if we want to move the pivot, from what I know, like in my, it's quite easily, there's one button and you can just change the pivot of an object. But in Blender, this is the way that I know to change the pivot. That you have to move the 3D cursor to where you want the pivot to be, and then you can change the pivot of that object. So in this case, Shift S, cursor to selected, yes. And I'm gonna have this in quick menu here, which is like origin to 3D cursor. But obviously you're not gonna have that if you're not using my Blender. So you can go in object, set origin to 3D cursor. And now you're gonna see that is attached to this one. And also, like if I start snapping, it's gonna snap to the grid, right? So this is gonna be a bit more easy for me. Now also by the way, I right click, do shade smooth. By default, it was like this. I'm not going to go through why this is right now. I think you can just accept the truth that this is going to look better for now. Now we've done one floor. Let's just call this base floor walls. I'm going to call this door. All right. What next? Well, what next is we're going to make a floor. So, sorry, it's going to be slightly smaller. Okay, the way that we want to do this is by let me think for a second. All right, so let's go to making these floors. And I'm going to, let's see, hide some of this. So the idea that I want to create here, and this is the kind of logic that I want to teach you, is that I want to make, sorry, not like that. I want to make just one house wall with a window like this. Oh, beautiful. And like I told you before, the goal here is to work as modular as possible, meaning that after I created this one, I want to how do I move things in Krita? No, okay. I want to yeah, I want to mirror this one, so we're gonna do a mirror here. After that, I will do an additional mirror here. Merge very low, that's fine. Meaning that I want what's ever here to also be reflected here. And after that is done, I want Blender to do this. Well, there's no point in copying that, obviously. I want it this length to be reflected here. And then I want it to be rotating here and then eventually going around the entire building. So we have one floor. Okay, so how should we do this? The first thing that we're going to do is to create a plane. Hold on, let me remove my tablet. I do R to indicate rotation, X because that's the angle, or that's the axis that I want to rotate it on, like so. And I don't need the full one here, so I'm gonna do Control R, remove the bottom one here. I'm gonna do it again here, like so, yeah. Let me think. I'm gonna delete these three ones. So sorry, I maybe needed to clarify. The way that I do this is by going Control R. Control R will give you one loop cut. Scrolling up with your middle mouse button like this will give you 2, and 4 is what I want, because then it's going to be completely in the middle. I'm going to delete these 3 faces, and in this case I've already created this mirror here, But I'm going to do it from scratch just to show you guys. I want to do, so like I showed you here, I want the first mirror to be here. But the way I do this, if I would make a mirror here, the pivot is here, so it's not going to be mirroring this part here. So I want to tell Blender that the mirror that I want needs to be here, okay? That means that I need to somehow create some kind of reference point for Blender to do this. The easiest way to do this, I would say, is that you move the 3D cursor to this point. The 3D cursor is how Blender used to do a lot of things. I think eventually a lot of people raged on it, myself included. But there's still some remnants of 3D cursor, and some people still really love 3D cursor. So I do cursor to selected, and then I do Shift A. I will add an empty. And just like we used the empty before for mirroring, this empty I will call house wall mirror. Or no, sorry, house wall empty. Try, okay. There we go. And then I'm gonna say that the mirror should be our house wall empty. Let's also name this house wall piece. That means we can do Control R to get a loop cut. Yeah, I'm gonna do a loop cut like this, loop cut like this, and Control B on both of them at the same time wasn't really giving me the result I wanted, so I'm just gonna do it one by one. So B here, and I do Alt click, that means I select the entire loop, and Control B means that I will move it like this. So we're creating the window, right? So don't go anything past here. Just try to keep somewhere that's reasonable. I might want to have them slightly closer. And you know, because we're doing a mirror, I want it to have some kind, I don't want it to be completely symmetrical, so I'm gonna push it a little bit like this. Right there. I'm going to do 3 to select faces, select my face, press I to do insert faces, because you could do the extrude here, extrude and then S, but you're gonna see that these borders are a bit uneven, and I want it to be completely even. To be fair, I think you can do an extrude option that does this, maybe. Oh, anyway, I'm not gonna bother trying to find it because I wanted to do insert faces, because as you can see, the insert faces gives me the more even edge that I want. And because I want to have a bit of a window border, I'm gonna do insert faces again and push this in. Beautiful. Might just also do a little window sill. So now I'm gonna do extrude and do Y, and then I'm gonna get something like this out. Maybe a little further than that. Nice. After that, I'm going to do, I mean, these windows are quite tall, maybe. Maybe we should, what am I doing? Push them down a bit. That's not how I would do that. Wireframe. Like so, maybe. Yeah, I think that's looking a bit more reasonable. All right, and then I will do mirror here. And let's see, it is a bit difficult to see. So we're gonna assign a material now. What material did we use for this one? Blue or red base. Okay, so we're doing a red base, and then I want these ones to have the blue material instead. So the way that you assign different materials to the same object, because you can see here now, if I would just select these ones, and I would just click on this plus sign, and I would have the blue material. Nothing is really happening, but the two materials are here available, and I can press assign. Now we're gonna have these two materials that are actually this one should be a different materials as well. I already made a glass material here, but you can just do press new and get the glass material. Sorry, now I missed to do the thing that I talked about. I need to assign this material here, and now we're gonna have the glass material. I kind of feel like these ones are not as thick as I want them to be, so I'm gonna pull these apart a bit. Yeah. Okay, so we have one side of the wall right now. Let's go and try making this wrap around the building. The way that I need to do this is, again, I mean, we can stack as many modifiers here as we want. Not always recommended, but you know, you can. This time we're going to do an array. We're going to do circle array. And as you can see, it's trying to encompass as many circles here as possible. And in our case, we want 4. That's going to make a circle. However, you might notice that we have an issue that everything is happening from here. The radius is 0. So let's fix that by doing -1. No, 1. And now we can just push this up to see how this looks like. I think this looks fine. Might be changing my mind about how tall this one is. So I'm gonna. So you can see this is the power of modifiers. Is that I'm able to do these kind of like modifications so close to the end. Like because sometimes you imagine something is gonna look good on the minimal modular level, but then once you see it in its entirety, it's not really working out that well. I mean, same thing. I might just change the size of this, like this. Rotation and scale, and then I'm going to do another array. As you can see, the array here is going on x-axis, which is not what I want. So I'm going to zero out here, do a Z1. Z just means a 1 just means that every time you finish the model, it's going to start the new one. So you could do like this if you want some separation in between. But I'm going to leave it a 1. Here I can type in as many floors that I want. So I'm going to do 5. Like so. Let's make some kind of dividers between these ones as well. I would also just recommend doing a little merge here. So things are fine and dandy. I mean, you don't need to have the this is gonna be based on if you want or not. You don't really need to do this. It's more like an aesthetical thing. Just in general, by the way, make sure that when you're scaling things, do not scale in the minus axis, because it's going to be hell for your engines later on. Let's see, I'm going to do something like this. Do a bevel modifier. Rotation and scale. Oh yeah, this is also kind of like worth mentioning. Like one of the reasons why I keep on doing apply rotation and scale. So, for example, let's say that you're making this one. I'm scaling like this. I'm scaling like that. Blah blah blah. And then I'm doing a bevel. And then a lot of people will see this one and saying like, oh, but I mean, it looks weird because the bevel here is very different from the bevel on this side. And this occurs because you do have scale values on your mesh. So what you need to do is, like, you can see now, as soon as I do apply rotation and scale, the bevel now is going to be even across the mesh. And that's kind of like what you want most of the time, unless you find like a very special case scenario where you want that effect. Let's see. Let's do some material. I'm going to do this for the block. And I'm going to do array again, offset Z. Now I'm just mostly going to do this by I. Something like that. Like this. Now I can kind of tell that I'm off because, as you can imagine, like if you're slightly off here, you're going to see it, the mistake cascading across these floors. So there are methods of doing it exactly, so you don't have to eyeball it, but not necessary for this tutorial. Okay, so finally, the thing that I want to make is just some kind of like sign on top of this building. Now we're going to do a kind of a novelty modifier. It's a modifier that doesn't like functionally work the best, but I sometimes use it, and I just want to go through the idea of modifiers, and again having modularity when you're creating models. So here I'm going to create a little box up here, and now we're going to try this modifier that's called wireframe. Wireframe modifier is pretty nifty. Basically what it does is that wherever there is an edge, it's going to create this thing that looks like a bar. Again, the same thing as we could see with the bevel thing is that now that I've been scaling it, it has uneven thickness here at the ends. Again, maybe that's something you actually want, because you want to have like thicker ends, but in this case I'm gonna do rotation and scale. I'm gonna reduce the thickness of it. And now remember I told you that this is based on the edges of the model, meaning that if I go in here and do Control R to insert edge loop, I use the middle mouse button to increase the number of edge loops here, and then press enter. Now you just have to guess what's going to happen when I go into object mode, like this. It's not really looking very cagey for now, but again, this is just about the edges, so we can manipulate the edges in ways that we want it to behave like. In this case, I'm going to face mode, right click. I will do poke faces. Poke faces will take, if I'm just going to show it on one of these first, it's going to go into the middle here, and then it's just going to kind of cut it into different pieces like this. So I'm going to do all of the faces, poke faces. Again, let's look at how it looks like. It looks pretty okay, actually. Kind of what I want. Maybe that is what I want, actually. But if you want to try a different kind of look, you can do triangle to quads. And then you're going to see it's going to remove some of these middle ones. So it looks like this instead. Actually might be something that I want. Going to decrease this a little bit. So again, because this is a modifier, I can, when I'm zooming in or zooming out and looking at my building, I can be, it's a bit too thick. And then I can reduce this one. By the way, if you want to reduce with a higher precision, you press shift and then Blender is going to go in a lot more precision mode. Push this back a bit. Now, eventually, or finally, we're going to make the text on top. Also super easy. Shift A, and Blender will help us out by having a text thing here. The way you modify text is that you go tab into edit mode, and then you can just actually just write whatever you want. I'm naming my building row block. I don't know what that means, but I'm sure it means something. You can change the font here. It's a bit cumbersome, but it's possible. Let's see, extrude. I'm going to extrude the text a little bit. Like so. I will also do origin to geometry, so it's a bit easier to place. So I'm doing Control R X90, -90. So again, you can go in here to modify if you feel like it didn't. Okay. Okay. I give up. What the hell is going on? I don't know. So here, I'm gonna put this text on my building. Yes. And you know what? It deserves a new material. Let's do green. And just match it as you want. This is also just a model, so I think we can do bevel here as well if you want. This one, the mesh is actually a bit if you're going to convert this to mesh, you're going to understand why the bevel is not really working for this one, but that's fine for now. Make this a bit darker maybe. Or like this actually. That's good enough for me. That's fine. And so we have our beautiful, beautiful house ready. And this is what I'm hoping that you're going to achieve in this very light tutorial. The point of this tutorial was to do general 3D navigation, being able to differentiate between object mode and edit mode, being able to manipulate the mesh in both states, but then also basic mesh manipulation, just like extrude, inserting edge loops, and then finally also using modifiers as something to be able to help you reiterate your work much more quickly than before. That's gonna conclude this tutorial that is covering the basics of Blender. You had object navigation, you understood 3D space in edit mode, and then also the concept of modularity, as well as using modifiers to model. Now I'm hoping that you're gonna have some basis, and maybe we'll see each other in the next tutorial.